panahon ngayon, ano ang alagang Pilipino? Ito ay alagang hindi makasarili. Alagang laging gumagawa ng paraan. Alagang nagkakaisa para sa bawat isa. Alagang handa sa anumang hamon. Alagang ramdam kahit saan ka man. Alagang maaasahan. Alagang nagbibigay ng solusyon at mga ngiti. Alagang busog sa pagmamahal. Yan ang alagang Pilipino. Alagang may husay at malasakit. Alagang nagbabayanihan. Nakikiisa ang Unilab sa lahat ng Pilipinong walang sawang nagbibigay ng alaga para sa kalusugan ng bayan. Alagang tunay, alagang Pilipino.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord Jesus, our divine healer, we thank you for allowing us to be together, even just virtually today. Bless and make us your humble instruments, so that we may see you in every patient who seeks our help. Enlighten our minds, guide our senses and intuition, so that we may finally find a cure to this COVID-19 that continues to threaten and haunt humankind. May our touch not only provide healing, but more so assurance that we are at their side to comfort and accompany them in their pains. May the fire of your love inflame our hearts enough to consume us, so that our patients will no longer see us, but perceive you and know that ultimately it is you and your love that heal them. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Ibigay sa kanan ng kasayahan, dahil ako'y kasama sa tanan. Ang lahat may gintong nasa, magising at masigla. Kapisanan ay tunay hanggang langit, suliranin itong alikain. Ikalangin natin ang tapat sa may tapat, may lunas sa lahat. Ikalangin natin ang tapat sa may tapat, may lunas sa lahat.
Greetings! Ako po ay bumabati ng isang maningning na umaga sa inyong lahat. This all started when the whole world was struck by a very tiny enemy that put all of us into squander. It caused a deadly disease that was later named called COVID-19. Tayo ay binusalan ng face mask, ating mga mata ay tinakpan ng face shield, ang buong katawan ay binalot ng hazmat, and to top it all, lahat tayo ay ikinulong sa kanya-kanyang tahanan ng higit na 3 buwan. We are going to fight virus ka lang. We have to create a whole new environment, and all of us have to shift to the new normal. The Philippine Medical Association, spearheaded by its Quezon City region and the Quezon City Medical Society, have organized this meeting to formulate and disseminate clinical protocols for the new normal. We are not going to fight this battle sitting down. We have invited experts from the Department of Health, infectious disease specialists, PhilHealth, and the presidents of the different specialty organizations such as the Philippine College of Surgeons, the Philippine College of Physicians, the Philippine OBGYN Society, and the Philippine Pediatric Society to guide us on each individual clinical protocol. We have courageously pioneered the use of technology in creating a virtual meeting synonymous to a convention. We begin with a formal opening ceremony followed by plenary lectures by our experts. To further entice your interests, there are breakout sessions based on specialties, booth visits to our partners in the industry, and lastly, an annual business meeting by the Quezon City Medical Society. We enjoin you to actively participate in this meeting and expect lots of prizes and surprises. Initially, I would like to announce that we are giving a prize of 1,000 pesos to the number 1,000 registrant in this meeting. 1,000 for 1,000. And the number 1,000 registrant, the prize goes to Dr. Eleanor Senidoza. She may claim her prize electronically through bank transfer or GCash. As the battle cry of the Philippine Medical Association, we heal as one. I would like to thank the President of the Philippine Medical Association, Dr. Jose Santiago, its executive officers and governors, the Quezon City Medical Society, headed by its president, Dr. Lilibeth Pascual Nagit, and its officers, the Secretariat of the Philippine Medical Association, and the Quezon City Medical Society, Ms. Ella, Miss Ellen, Miss Christy, and Jeff. I would also like to thank our partners, Unilab and its divisions, the PRMD, headed by Mr. Carlos Bigare, our team members, Mr. Ed Canapi and Ms. Chona and Xiong, the Nexus team, the UERM Alumni Association with its president, Dr. Sam Irastorza, UERM Medicine Batch 84, headed by its president, Dr. Ricky Mendoza, and its coordinator, Dr. Daisy Santos. The Philippine Urological Association, headed by Dr. Harry Longno, the Philippine Academy of Medical Specialists, headed by Dr. June Benjamin, the International Academy of Medical Specialists, headed by Dr. Fesco Yapindon, the Fatima College of Medicine Alumni Association, the International College of Surgeons, the Philippine Academy of Aesthetic and AIDS Management Medicine, the Philippine Society for Quality Health Care, the Philippine Society of Oncology, the De Los Santos Medical Center Alumni Association, the World City Medical Center, and PHAPI, PHA, PCHA, and PCOM. Of course, there are many more that have helped us. This occasion goes to a tremendous success. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay ang PMA, mabuhay ang QCMS, mabuhay ang lahat ng doctors sa Pilipinas and lahat ng frontliners. And as our battle cry says, we heal as one.
Isang maningning na umaga sa inyo lahat. Magandang Quezon City Region. Wow, PMA. It's my honor and pleasure to address all of you this morning on the occasion of the PMA Quezon City Regional Meeting with the theme Shifting to the New Normal in Clinical Practice. On March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic, as a game changer. This pandemic has permanently changed the way we do things. We must welcome the new normal, embrace changes with an open heart. There are so many challenges and setbacks that beset our present time, though we need to manage the current challenges and, of course, the daily grind. We need to focus on the bigger picture, the question of where we are now and where we're going and where we want to be. The whole world has witnessed the heroism of the healthcare workers as frontliners at the helm of this disaster response. We lost leaders from our profession, colleagues, family members, and friends. I commend the bravery of the physicians and other healthcare professionals and other healthcare workers who remain at the front lines. Despite the dangers and challenges you face, you continue to serve our nation. I admire your resolve and your spirit of service. PMA remains dynamic and united. We continue to believe that brighter year will be upon us very soon. The hope is anchored on the countless number of people demonstrating generosity and kindness in coping with the pandemic crisis we face. Now, more than ever, PMA is expected to uphold its commitment to find ways or better options to ensure continuing professional development, an evolving need for safety as the new normal in serving our members. As a proactive measure to guarantee the continued safety of our members, we have to adopt new approaches or paths using webinars and different online learning platforms to give updates on the current issues, guidelines from our excellent speakers. We now have the opportunity to use the pandemic crisis positively and build better platforms that are more sustainable and inclusive. The implementation of educational programs for continuing professional development through scientific meetings, fora, and conferences had always been effective and successful in qualitative measures. PMA was able to respond proactively to socioeconomic and political issues like universal healthcare and PhilHealth. This PMA Quezon City regional meeting is a classic example of a virtual learning platform put together by PMA Governor for Quezon City, Dr. Wilfredo Tagle, the officers, members of Quezon City Medical Society, led by Dr. Maria Lilibet Nagit, the president of the QCMS, in collaboration with Unilab. This gives me the opportunity to thank Unilab for being one of the PMA's healthcare partners. We thank them for their unwavering support through Mr. Carlos Bigare, Mr. Ed Canapi, Ms. Chon Enxiong, and other peer RMD in staging this virtual regional council meeting, which can be accessed not only by Quezon City region, but also by the other 16 PMA regions as well. Your timely support enables us to serve and to pursue trusted quality healthcare for all Filipinos. You help us raise the standard of envisioning the best in the medical field, uplifting the continuing medical education, as well as aspire to improve today's practices and advancements. Through the years, PMA and Unilab has continued to build a partnership with strong foundation and desire to serve. To the management and its divisions, under the leadership of Mr. Sebastian Bakiran and Mr. Sanico, we thank you for extending the spirit of bayanihan to us in protecting healthcare workers at the front lines by donating PPEs and alagang Unilab kit. It's quite evident that Filipinos are masters of collaboration. That is what bayanihan is about after all. May malasakit, may pagmamahal, at nagtutulungan. This unprecedented health occurrence in our lifetime, when cure is still to be found, make us anxious in finding health measures and radical reforms in order to fight the pandemic. However, we can only do this not as an individual in the exercise of professional autonomy, in union and unison. Everybody needs somebody, and no one operates alone, regardless of how much talent is innate. All the time, helping hands are needed for us to heal our nation as one. No matter how complex the situations today, needing a complex solution, a mega solution, there can be innovative ways of thinking. We can begin to engage ourselves as doctors in the healthcare revolution, where the emphasis is on wellness and life, rather than sickness and death. As everyone continues to role in putting an end to this pandemic, frontliners, homeliners, backliners, I truly hope we will come out kinder, more forgiving, more responsible, and better human beings. Let us face the courage, the health changes and challenges at point of our potential, strength, and ability to make this world a better place to live in. Contemplating that the next generation will look up to this present generation. I would like to greet all of you for joining us in this webinar CPD initiative. To end the message, let me share this quote. The sun is a daily reminder that we too can rise again from darkness, that we too can shine out on light, that after this crisis, we too can start another joyful chapter of our life. We serve, we share, we show compassion, we pray as one, we heal as one. Mabuhay ang Quezon City, mabuhay ang Unilab, at mabuhay ang PMA.
To Dr. Jojo Santiago, PMA President, Dr. Benny Atienza, Vice President of PMA, to other EXICOM members, to Dr. Bong Tagle, PMA Governor and Organizing Committee Chair of this convention, to Dr. Lilibet Nagit, QCMS President, our host society, to all our distinguished plenary speakers, to all the specialty society presidents, members of QC Medical Society, and members of PMA, to all the guests this morning, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. True to our values of husay and malasakit, Unilab remains to be committed despite of the difficult situation. It rises above the challenge and provide Filipinos trusted quality healthcare that has been tested through the complexities of this pandemic. This condition has led to sweeping changes and disruptions in every aspect of our lives. Together, we experience isolation, worries, anxiety, and many more uncertainties and unknowns about the present and the future. Despite fear, we thank all health workers in risking and giving their lives to fulfill their duties. We salute all of you for standing by the need of our country. You are truly the living heroes of this generation. We in Unilab are celebrating our 75th anniversary this year. It may be far from what we planned, but the celebration has been more so meaningful. Living to share the promise of trusted quality health care while all of us fear the deadly disease is one thing we are proud of our company. Though it's never been easy to deliver, but it was inevitable to us in extending help and support to our frontliners and Filipino men. We are with you in protecting and saving lives. Our bayanihan spirit has broadened our capacity to reach every patient, every Filipino who needs care and compassion. Unilab manufacturing has never stopped producing medicines. Our researchers working diligently to find solutions. Our procurement provides every requirement and need for donations. Our field operations have been always connected and ready to serve. We are now in the new normal. The way of life has changed, and even methods of medications. We need to learn and adapt to survive. As we face this new journey, learning remains to be unstoppable. We continue to strive to be your preferred partner in your continuing medical education. We will not stop in finding ways to secure professional development as we do our share in elevating the standards of medical practice today. We are now in a virtual assembly. Webinars have been part of our everyday lives. Learning the platforms, listening to online speakers, having on-screen discussions, filling up computer-generated forms, designing digital graphics, and cascading email invitations have changed the way we do conferences and conventions. Innovation has paved the way, and we need to go with the flow of this transition of advancement, being able to be up to date and to keep on learning for the health and future of our countrymen. We are with you in this endeavor. It may entail hardship, but together, we know we will all make it. Inspirasyon po namin ang Pilipino sa pag-aalaga sa bayan. Mabuhay ang Pilipinong manggagamot, mabuhay ang PMA, at magandang umaga po muli sa inyong lahat.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen,
And
welcome to the Quezon City Medical Society Regional Meeting, the shifting to the new normal in clinical practice.
And as you've noticed, it's actually a pilot conference, a pilot convention. So all eyes are actually on us right now. And as your host, let me walk you through to what we expect for this morning's event. First and foremost, if you notice, when you registered, when you entered, there's such a thing as what we call a landing pad, where you actually see the pictures of our speakers, the titles of their lectures, as well as everything what we would be expecting for this morning. Now, here's what you need to do. For the plenary session, you've all clicked on attend, and later on we'll be listening to the plenary speakers. But once they're done with, you have to leave the room, and it's like actually attending your regular convention or your regular conference, that you actually have to leave that room and then attend our breakout sessions. We actually have 4, one for surgery, one for obstetrics and gynecology, one for pediatrics, and one for internal medicine. And then afterwards, you actually have to leave that again and go to one of the highlights of our conference, which is actually our booth visits. For this conference, we have 6 specific divisions, and you can actually visit each one of them. There's a couple of hours for you to do that, and you can just click on whichever company you would want to visit. We suggest and recommend for you to visit all, because each and every company has its own gimmick, has its own prizes, and to top it all, if you visit all of these conferences, or these booths as we call them, you actually will be able to join the raffle in the end, and we'll be notifying you by email if you do win. Now, for some house rules, we do have, if you notice, all of you are muted at the moment, and nobody can actually talk. But if you do have questions, we will be entertaining the questions after the third plenary speaker has given his lecture. And afterwards, we will actually pick out from the chat box, the question and answer box, and try to type in your questions there. We're expecting a lot of questions that come in, so if we cannot, or if the speakers cannot be able to answer your questions, we will give it to them and provide you with the answers via email. So this is the new norm, and hopefully for the next, if not few months, I guess for the next year, we'll probably be doing most of our conventions, our conferences, and meets this way. So let's get the ball rolling. For our first plenary lecturer, well, he's kind of popular nowadays. We've seen him in television, in digital media. We've listened to him in radio. He's actually the former spokesperson of the Department of Health. He's a former director of the Epidemiology Bureau of the Department of Health, the former president of the Philippine Society for Microbiology and Infectious Disease, and also the past president of the Philippine Foundation for Vaccination. Please welcome our first speaker, the Director for Knowledge Management and Information Technology Service of the Department of Health, Dr. Enrique Tayag.
Good morning, and thank you for the introduction. Before I begin my presentation, I'd like to thank and also welcome the President of the Philippine Medical Association, Jose Santiago, the Vice President of the PMA, Benny Atienza, the Governor of the Philippine Medical Association, Quezon City Region, Wilfredo Tagle, Bong Tagle, my classmate, the UERM Alumni Foundation led by Sam Erastorza, and also my classmates Ricky Mendoza and Daisy Santos for the UERM Batch 84, the Quezon City Medical Society President, Dr. Lilibeth Nagit, all the officials and all those who have joined, and congratulations to the 1,000 registered participant for winning the first raffle, and thank you to Unilab, the General Manager, Carlos Vigare. Now I'm going to share the presentation now. Good morning once again. Kumain na ba kayo ng inyong almusal? What time did you wake up today? If meron tayong mood meter, i-chat nyo nga sa amin, ano ang mood nyo? 10, you're so upbeat, or 1, you are so low. The topic assigned to me is on sharing with you the Department of Health's recommendations for clinical practice. What's the world we live in now? Look at this map. This is available from the WHO Situation Report. And here we show you countries, and the map has been color-coded. The dark thick red represents countries wherein over 100,000 cases were reported over the past 7 days. Globally, we now have 9.1 million cases and over 470 deaths. That's around 5% case fatality rate. In the Southeast Asian region or Western Pacific region of the WHO, the Philippines ranks third among countries. We knew that there will be challenges and vulnerabilities. Let's take a look at this list. Were you challenged when government advised everyone to stay home? We have been in various levels of lockdown. How about social distancing, which we have translated to physical distancing? Can you actually measure the distance between yourself and the other person to minimize the risk of any exposure at 1 meter or 2 meters? How about laboratory tests? Did you even get your swab test yourselves? Was it painful? Did you get the results quite easily or immediately? Or did you wait longer? How about contact tracing? Have you participated? Were you visited by an LGU health worker because you were tagged as a contact or someone who was exposed to a suspect, probable, or confirmed COVID-19 case? Did you experience quarantine? I've been working from home ever since the lockdown. I went out only once or 3 times, as I can remember, over the months that we had the lockdown. I was able to be serious about staying home. How about isolation when you're sick? So we quarantine those who are exposed and we isolate those who have symptoms. Please remember, when new information was available that asymptomatics or pre-symptomatics can actually infect or spread the virus, then they too were isolated for several days. How about treatment and care? Well, there's an ongoing controversy now in Cebu. Steam inhalation. Are you using dexamethasone now for serious or patients in critical conditions? How about infection control? Are you receiving supplies? Or you ran out of supplies? Disposition of dead bodies. Have you written the right cause of death on the medical certification, the cause of death? This is an old slide, but you know that yesterday we reported, the Department of Health reported 32,295 cases and 1,204 deaths. Below are the epidemic curves based on the date of onset. We also report recoveries. And this is one of the indicators that we want to see if we want to make an analysis if we are actually flattening the curve. Because there are 2 requirements to say that we are flattening the curve. that there are fewer cases at the same time, fewer cases being hospitalized at the same time. And the capacity of the health system with the surge of patients. Right now, we are at 36% or so in terms of bed accommodations. That's a good sign. But these are national figures. We have to have separate figures for cities, municipalities, provinces, and that's why local governments should have this information. And it starts with us. Okay. Every time we see a patient, okay, we at the Department of Health anticipate and have trust in you, in all of us, that these cases will be reported, whether they are suspect cases, probable cases, or confirmed cases. Earlier in the pandemic, we named these individuals as persons under monitoring, persons under investigation, but now, as new information is available, everything is interim and we update guidelines, including case definitions. It is very important to note that the Department of Health, while we accept the criticism that the data is underreported in terms of cases, there's a backlog. And I want to explain here, what's that backlog? Well, the backlog may be related to the processing of specimens so that test results will be available, or the backlog may be about reporting the results back to the health facilities from which the samples were actually originated from. And the backlog can actually be the case investigation forms. This has to be completed so that we can have the complete epidemiologic picture. And we need this so that our analysis, whether it's predictive modeling or just plain analysis, if you're doing the analysis, I'm sure you're doing the analysis when you fetch the data from our website or from our daily pressers, then we can get a picture of what's really happening. It is not the intention of the Department of Health to share with you data that are inaccurate. There are delays, but it doesn't mean we will not be able to make an analysis. Test, trace, and treat. So what do we do now in your clinical practice? Every time you're able to diagnose a case and you report this case through our surveillance system, there is a domino effect because from these cases, contact tracing now begins. There are two types. And one that is the gold standard is the manual contact tracing. We just interview the case and we ask them who might have been exposed. So our usual suspects will be those household members in dwellings where they stayed, where they worked, where they have been for a certain period of days. And then if they have been exposed, if there's close contact, we quarantine them, we observe them for 14 days, and if they show symptoms like fever, cough, shortness of breath, or anything, if they feel unwell, then they have to be isolated. They can stay at home if it's possible to stay at home, or they can be referred to a local government unit's quarantine facility. The TTMF, we call them, the Test Treatment Monitoring Facility, and they can have their tests there at home. It's unlikely that you'll be tested in a facility, you'll be tested. And if it's serious and it's critical, then you should be in the hospital. Now, there have been issues on mass testing. No, but what's happening now practically is everyone is being tested, and we have to have caution on this mass testing. It's not as if that anyone wants to be tested, because a negative test means nothing. It only means about your exposure. But if you get exposed again, a negative test won't help you. So we have here the subgroups for mass testing, meaning those we have to prioritize, especially early in the pandemic, that we were not able to actually have our testing facilities up to par with standards of having 30,000 tests at least every day. But now we have that. So if you're asymptomatic, it's not automatic that you should be tested. You're asymptomatic and will be tested because you are, for example, a close contact of a suspect, probable, or confirmed case. And there's also caution for the test you will have to give your patients. Is it the RT-PCR? Is it the rapid testing? Please make sure that all results are interpreted by you. Okay. A piece of paper cannot be the final diagnosis for a patient. A negative test, but if clinically you think these are cases, then you just have to take care of them and treat them as cases, even with a negative test. And infection control, please chat. How happy are you with the PPEs as frontliners, either provided from donations from the Department of Health or from the institutions where you work? Do you have enough? Do you have to recycle? Is there someone who supervises you? Were you given training? Do you estimate your stack outs? Do you receive them on time? And how about reporting those who were exposed and possibly are carrying the virus based on your tests? For treatment and care, the Department of Health has adopted the recommendations from the Philippine Society for Microbiology Infectious Disease. We'd like to thank the other medical societies who have reached out to the Department of Health and gave their recommendations. The evidence is in a flux. The WHO has been coordinating with the Department of Health so that we will be updated on the current trends on treatment. And the DOH expect all doctors, if you have evidence that you can share with us, we can discuss it so that it becomes our standard. Please tell us. We want to work it out with you. And there's a game changer. Have you opened your clinics, my colleagues? Are you hesitant? Have you seen your patients lately? This has been disrupted. That's why the DOH has anticipated this. I'm managing the DOH COVID-19 hotline. I'd like to thank, for example, the Philippine College of Physicians for their volunteers, the UERMMC, and the Philippine Medical Association, and those involved in telemedicine. The first version is through a hotline. The next versions will be through smartphone apps. Then we're going to pilot virtual teleconsultation in Quezon City. This is one way of giving consultation. It gives the patient the sense of calmness. It removes their fear, especially if this is 24/7, especially if they hear a voice. Okay? It's always a good thing for them. And we encourage you to embrace this new normal. Learn how you can participate in telehealth or telemedicine. Tell us. We'll give you trainings. There are guidelines that we can share. And we like to thank the Academe, the National Telehealth, for providing us guidelines. And we are working on this to improve it more. For contact tracing, we have most recently coordinated with Google, Apple for our distance contact tracing. We're going to improve Stay Safe. So this is proximity tracking. If you have a smartphone, if you have your Bluetooth on, then without even knowing it, you will be alerted on your phones that you are in proximity to a suspected, probable, or confirmed case. And so therefore you can do something about it. Okay, you can quarantine yourself. You can call through telemedicine hotlines. You can visit a local health facility, a quarantine facility, or a laboratory if you will be guided if you need to be tested. But we should worry how we can protect ourselves first. Please help us spread awareness to communities, to our families, that really we have to stay home. And when we go out in public, there's already evidence. Mask. Okay. Wearing mask is a mask. Okay. And so hand washing, physical distancing, all of this should be done together. It's a system. No one public health measure will protect us. It's a combination. It starts from the individual, then the family, then the community, then the institutions. We cannot rely on government. We cannot rely on DOH. It should be us, individuals. And what's you think are extraordinary in these slides, they are now routine. Temperature checks, physical distancing, okay, and office spaces that have being reconfigured. And how can we expect the new normal? Look at this slide. I'm showing you that there are stages. We'll be in good situation, very good situation if we have the vaccine. But what's the period between A to C when we're trying to slow the spread? Is it 1.5 years? Is it 2 years? It is 3 years. So we are here for the long haul. There will be no shortcuts. I'm sorry. We will have to be very vigilant, and we have to embrace new things. Please share with us. How do you provide primary care services to communities? Do you volunteer? Do you reach out to local government units? Ito ang tunay na bayanihan. Mga kasamahan ko sa medical profession, we should be vigilant, and we should be thankful for all the frontliners. They are heroes. They do not need to die. Each one have stories to tell about their patients, their co-workers, their family, and themselves. We must know these stories. We must listen to these stories because our survival depends on them. The war has not ended. There are many battles to fight for. It is not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It is not the strongest that survives, but the species that survives is the one that is able to adapt and adjust to the environment in which it finds itself. So, colleagues, members of our profession, we have to adapt. We cannot go back to yesterday. The new normal beckons us, and we should be the leaders for this change. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, Dr. Tayag. Our next speaker has a master's degree with distinction in tropical medicine from the Nagasaki University Institute of Tropical Medicine, a biomedical research fellowship under the Korean National Institute of Health and Seoul National University, a clinical fellowship training in infectious disease, and the past president and advisor of the Philippine Hospital Infection Control Society, a board member of the Philippine Society for Microbiology and Infectious Diseases, a diplomat and fellow of the Philippine College of Physicians, as well as the Philippine Society for Microbiology and Infectious Diseases, a medical specialist, and overall training officer at the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine of the Department of Health. Our next lecturer, Dr. Arthur Desi Roman.
Thank you for the invitation. I'd like to thank the organizers, and good morning to Dr. Santiago Atienza, Dr. Tagle, Dr. Tayag, the PMA leadership, the QCMC leadership, the Unilab leadership for providing an opportunity for me to share this lecture entitled Optimizing Outpatient Antibiotic Treatment. And the second part of my lecture is all about the conduct of consultation in your outpatient clinics in the era of COVID-19. These are just some of my disclosures. Now, we all know that COVID-19 is primarily a disease of the lungs caused by your SARS coronavirus 2. It originated from a live animal market in Wuhan, China, and eventually, because of the increased numbers, it was declared a public health emergency of international concern and a pandemic on March 11, 2020. And it has affected over 4.24 million people globally already, and more than that. Now, your SARS coronavirus 2, the etiologic agent of COVID-19, is a single-stranded RNA virus. It's an envelope virus. When you say envelope virus, it's really easy to kill. It's 90% related to your SARS coronavirus, first identified back in 2003, and it's 50% related to your MERS coronavirus, first identified as early as 2012. Now, it's really shaped like a crown because of the presence of spikes on the surface, and take note that these spikes facilitate the binding to the host target cells. In terms of transmission, and this is probably the major concern of everyone, your respiratory droplets and contact are still the primary modes of transmission of SARS coronavirus 2. When you talk about respiratory droplets, these are particles composed mainly of water plus respiratory fluid that are large enough to fall to the ground rapidly, and they do not travel beyond 6 to 12 feet after being produced. And often, they have diameters of more than 5 micrometers. And so, because of the sheer size, okay, as soon as they are produced and they are expelled by the infected people, for example, then there's a tendency to fall right to the ground right away without traveling beyond 6 to 12 feet. And that is the reason why we are encouraging physical distancing. Because if you're going to look at this particular representation by of a patient infected with coronavirus, the green portions there are SARS coronavirus 2. You see that most of your SARS coronavirus 2 is concentrated in the lung, and when this particular patient sneezes or coughs, it gets transformed into respiratory droplets, and these respiratory droplets can eventually contaminate the surfaces that you frequently touch, including your tabletops, your sinks, the doorknobs. And so it's really important for us to maintain a distance of 1 to 2 meters or 3 to 6 feet, with the idea that in case we come in contact or we meet a person that is infected with SARS coronavirus 2, even if that particular infected individual coughs or sneezes, as long as we keep ourselves physically distanced from that particular person of the distance of 1 to 2 meters, then we are generally decreasing the risk of getting infected ourselves. Now, they say that for SARS coronavirus 2, you maintain a distance of 2 meters, but for those persons who farts, baka you might have to stay farther, 3 meters. Kapag ang taong mahal mo, may iba ng gusto, you might have to really distance yourselves more than 100 kilometers. Pero dun sa mga taong may utang sa'yo, you might have to maintain a distance similar to or equivalent to the distance from the Earth to the Moon and back. Now, the World Health Organization recommends and continues to recommend that droplets and contact precautions be exercised for those people caring for COVID-19 patients. Now, yung physical distancing that I told you about, there has been a most recent publication, the Lancet, that would show us the benefit of physical distancing. For example, if you don't perform physical distancing, then your risk of getting infected is at 12.8%. But if you practice this particular intervention, 1 meter or more of physical distancing, you actually bring down the risk from 12.8% to 2.6%. And this is really a significant decrease. Now, some of us have heard about the possible airborne transmission of SARS coronavirus 2. And in fact, in at least 3 articles, they report that there can be a probability of airborne or aerosolization of your SARS coronavirus 2. In this publication by Lorimalin, for example, it said that SARS coronavirus 2 grown in tissue culture were aerosolized using a high-powered nebulizer, and it can stay in the air for 3 hours. But you have to take that limitation, because this particular setting does not actually reflect the clinical setting, the clinical patient that we encounter, because usually, di ba, wala namang powered nebulization to cause aerosolization of the SARS coronavirus 2. And this second study, for example, wherein SARS coronavirus 2 was identified in only 1 out of 13 environmental samples, but not in other samples collected at a distance of 10 centimeters. And in a third study, SARS-CoV-2 was detected via PCR from air samples from only 1 of 3 patient rooms. Now, the limitations of this study are the following. Yung detection of viral antigens via PCR is not really indicative that the virus detected was viable. It can just be dead virus already. And these studies did not consider diluted air coming into the room, and that is actually your air changes or ventilation. And of course, the very limited samples provided by the study. So, the World Health Organization continues to recommend airborne precautions for circumstances and settings in which aerosol generating procedures and support treatment are going to be performed according to your risk assessment and not in the general as a general part of the precaution. Now, let's talk about bacterial co-infections on top of viral infection. Going back to the 1918 Spanish flu, there was a report that most fatalities back then were due to subsequent bacterial infections, particularly with your Streptococcus pneumoniae. And back in 2009, as I was a medical clerk, I think, H1N1 influenza outbreak or pandemic, 1 in 4 had bacterial co-infections. And they reported that poor outcomes were associated with bacterial co-infection. In this study, for example, from China, published recently in 2020, there seems to be a trend towards those patients with secondary infection and co-infection having a greater risk for dying compared to those with no secondary or co-infection with any bacteria. In as much as 50% of patients with COVID-19, they died and they had secondary bacterial infections. But in a meta-analysis, only 8%, mababa lang po. This is around 806 patients were reported as having bacterial or fungal co-infection during hospitalization. But take note that in this study also, as much as 72% of these patients received antimicrobial. So really, during this time that there's a lot of uncertainties in the management of COVID-19, particularly during the first part, no March po siguro or early part of the April, wherein we were overwhelmed by a lot of critical cases. Ang hirap talaga mag-decide. And the question really is an antimicrobial indicated in COVID-19? And the answer to this is not all patients will really require antibiotic treatment. And your decision to start antibiotics depends on the presence of compatible signs and symptoms with a bacterial pneumonia. For example, your patient comes in with a combination of cough, shortness of breath, dyspnea, pruritic chest pain that may be accompanied by systemic symptoms such as your fever, chills, fatigue, and anorexia. And you can use your chest x-ray as a possible adjunctive treatment to strengthen the possibility of a bacterial diagnosis. In terms of your risk stratification for community-acquired pneumonia, this is the same risk stratification that we use when we are trying to decide whether a patient, a COVID-19 suspect, for example, should be started on your antimicrobial. For example, you still have to look at your vital signs, whether they are deranged or not, the presence of other conditions such as alterations in your mental status, the presence of comorbidities, is there any suspected aspiration, is there severe sepsis, septic shock, and is there a need for mechanical ventilator? And the way we risk stratify them is we still follow the guidelines set previously. So that would be low risk pneumonia, moderate risk pneumonia if you have unstable vital signs, and when you have unstable comorbid conditions, and when you are requiring mechanical ventilation already, when there's sepsis, and when the patient is intubated, that patient is categorized under high risk. And of course, your antibiotic recommendations will be different when you talk about low-risk patients, moderate-risk patients, and high-risk patients. We go by the recommendations, right? So for low-risk CAP, the treatment, the antibiotic options would still be amoxicillin 1 gram 3 times a day, or erythromycin or azithromycin 500 milligrams once daily. And the following antibiotics should be started for empiric treatment of patients na low risk pa rin, but there's stable comorbid conditions. Again, stable comorbid conditions, because if the comorbidities are unstable, then you might have to treat that patient as moderate risk CAP already. So for low risk CAP with stable comorbidities, you give your amoxicillin, clavulanic acid, the furoxime with or without your clarithromycin or azithromycin. And usually for low-risk pneumonia, pneumonia that you treat on an outpatient basis, 5 days of antibiotics would be good enough. Right. So let's try to just go to a few cases. Let's look at this one. Case 1, you received a telemedicine consultation of a 45-year-old male complaining of cough and fever of 5 days. The symptoms started with sneezing and dry cough, for which he took anti-flu medicine. And the symptoms, unfortunately, evolved, and now the patient has fever. Ang highest temperature daw niya taken at home is 38.5 degrees Celsius. The phlegm was purulent already, but the patient can still perform his usual activities, and he has good appetite. He had a history of childhood asthma, pero the last attack was at 15 years already. Now, 2 persons were diagnosed with COVID-19 in their street during the ECQ period, but none inside their household. My question for you is, what are you going to advise this patient? Are you going to tell this patient to consult the emergency room right away and advise admission? Are you going to ask to consult the ER? Ask him to consult the ER for swabbing and then send him home, prescribe amoxiclav and advise home quarantine? Or are you going to continue to observe and advise the patient to increase oral fluid intake? The PSMID guidelines has actually come up with 4 groups of patients. Risk classification for suspect or confirmed COVID-19. And according to these groups, kung ano yung magiging corresponding management and diagnostics necessary. For example, for your group A, these are adult patients less than 60 years of age with no comorbid illnesses, and the symptoms are just mild and non-specific. There's actually no need for you to request for anything. You can advise your patient to self-quarantine at home for 14 days, and Or you can send this to community health facilities para dun sila mag-isolate. You can provide symptomatic treatment and supportive care as necessary. And most of these patients will actually not require antibiotic therapy. For Group B patients, these are adult patients more than 60 years or young adults pero merong stable comorbid illnesses and there's pneumonia already. Your respiratory rate is still less than 30, your autostat is still more than 93%. Consider the following diagnostic tests, chest x-ray, and all those basic lab tests. And you may opt to send home young patients na stable naman yung comorbid condition, or you can admit to a COVID-19 designated room or unit and manage at cap low risk by giving your oral medications according to the CAP CPG. Now, for Group C patients, this is any adult with fever or severe acute respiratory infections, pero mabilis na yung heart rate, there's respiratory distress already, and there's desaturation, even with sepsis or septic shock. You can perform the following diagnostic tests, medyo comprehensive na siya, and you can manage this patient as moderate risk or high risk community-acquired pneumonia, depending upon the risk stratification table that I showed you earlier. Now, for Group D patients, these are critical patients. Yung rapidly worsening, tapos yung progressing yung kanilang infiltrates on X-ray, there's respiratory failure that's not explained fully by heart problems or fluid overload. These are the additional diagnostic tests that you can perform, medyo ICU-able na to and consider ARDS management already. Now, this table I would just like to share with you is a guide to the appropriate facility for every type of patient that you are able to encounter. For example, for any patient, for all types of patients, consulting for any consult, for example, primary care facility for triaging via telemedicine should be in place. Kasi ito pong primary care facility na to for triaging will actually the ones to direct the patient. Kailangan niya na ba pumunta sa ospital or can this patient just stay at home? Asymptomatic patients with close contact, again, they can stay at home, quarantine for 14 days, or they can to in monitoring facilities wherein they can complete their 14 days. For symptomatic patients, mild, whether suspect, probable, or confirmed, they can be referred to temporary treatment facilities for 14 days of isolation, or they can also be accommodated sa mga level 1 hospitals or infirmary, or kung stable naman yung pasyente based on your clinical assessment and there's logistics, there's a mechanism for follow-up in case there's rapid deterioration, then you can advise home isolation provided there's clearance from the patient's attending physician. And when you say clearance, this is after clinical assessment on whether the patient can really complete the isolation at home. For symptomatic, severe, or critical patients, whether suspect, probable, or confirmed cases, or just symptomatic, mild ka lang, pero the patient is elderly and there's comorbidities already, then you can refer this patient to COVID-19 referral hospitals, mga COVID-19 capable hospitals, or COVID-19 accepting level 2 or level 3 hospitals. For clinically recovered patients, right, awaiting completion of quarantine period, then they can complete this completion period at level 1 hospitals, infirmaries, or temporary treatment and monitoring facilities. And some examples of your TTNF, yung temporary treatment and monitoring facilities, would be World Trade Center, I think there's Quezon Institute, there's Rizal Memorial Coliseum, the Philippine Arena, and even PIC. But what do you tell our patients when we send them home? You have to tell them to stay at home, stay in a different room ideally, and use separate bathrooms if possible. Monitor their temperature and symptoms 3 times a day. Wear face masks. Perform frequent hand washing. Staff etiquette should always be instructed. And you should also provide emergency contact details kapag in case nag-progress yung symptoms. Avoid sharing household items, yung mga dishes, drinking glasses, utensils. They have to seek prompt medical attention if their illness is worsening. As much as possible, they should physically distance themselves from high-risk individuals, those with compromised immune system, the elderly, cancer patients, and those with comorbidities. So for case 1, what do you think? What's your answer? What are you going to advise the patient? So this is a telemedicine consult. Okay, there seems to be fever already. Merong initial period of observation, pero there's worsening. There's now purulent sputum. Tapos there's persistence of the fever. So you might have to start with your antibacterial treatment. And since the patient is eating properly and mukhang hindi naman compromised yung kanyang functional capacity, then you might not want to send this patient to the emergency room right away because you do not want to expose this particular patient to other COVID suspects. Okay? Wala namang significant comorbidities. The patient is not more than 6 years of age, and so baka hindi rin siya gawa ng swabbing right away. Right? So I think the best answer would be to prescribe antibiotics and advise home quarantine. Make sure that you instruct your patient na mag-consult or re-inform you kung merong progression ng signs and symptoms. Now, other patients are already needing our medical services. Diba? For the past 2.5 months, 3 months, we stayed at home. Only the patients admitted inside the hospitals were seen by the frontliners, and some patients are actually instructed to stay at home para hindi sila ma-expose. But as we lift the ECQ, for example, kailangan na natin i-address ulit yung mga concerns nila. Okay? COVID-19 should always be at the back of our minds, especially for symptomatic patients. May mga symptoms na consistent with COVID-19, but remember that our fear should not hinder us from providing care to our other non-COVID patients. And the way for us to allay this fear is for us to know that there are strategies to protect ourselves and our patients in this COVID-19 era. And I will discuss these strategies later. But let's just proceed with case 2. Okay? Case 2 is a 33-year-old female who complained of dysuria, nausea, fever, and chills of 3 days duration. This is her first time to experience this symptom, and she is not on any maintenance medication. She self-medicated with paracetamol, which relieved the symptoms only temporarily, and so this prompted the teleconsultation. So ang highest recorded temperature niya daw was 39 degrees Celsius, and when you ask, she was actually complaining of flank pain. So what's your diagnosis for this patient? So is it acute uncomplicated cystitis? Is it complicated UTI? Is it acute uncomplicated pyelonephritis or UTI in DM? So I'll give you a few seconds to think about your answer personally. So when you talk about UTI, you do have different UTI syndromes. And according to the UTI syndrome, kung ano yung ibibigay natin na antibiotic. Of course, you have your uncomplicated UTI, under which you have acute cystitis and acute pyelonephritis. You can have complicated UTI when you have the presence of complicating factors and your other UTI syndromes. Right? You have to remember that except for asymptomatic bacteriuria, okay, in certain groups of patients, all UTI syndromes include the presence of symptoms for your diagnosis. Okay? No symptoms means there's no UTI. So don't fall into a diagnostic trap. So the definition for acute uncomplicated pyelonephritis is that it is suspected in otherwise healthy women with no clinical or historical evidence of complicating risk factors, anatomic abnormalities, functional urologic abnormalities. Tapos, there's systemic symptoms already. There's fever, there's chills, there's flank pain, and you can have laboratory findings such as pyuria or growth in your urine culture. This is a list of your conditions that define complicated UTI, from your structural abnormalities to functional abnormalities, iatrogenic conditions, infection with TB or drug-resistant organisms, and other conditions that impair the host defense mechanism, such as renal transplantation and even diabetes mellitus. For patients presenting with UTI, always try to go through this list para malaman nyo if this is just plain uncomplicated UTI or complicated UTI already. So the answer to my question is actually this is acute uncomplicated pyelonephritis. This is not acute uncomplicated cystitis because you have systemic symptoms already. The next question is, what will you start this patient with? Are you going to give levofloxacin, cefuroxime, cotrimoxazole, or nitrofurantoin? I'll give you a few seconds to answer. So the answer really is levofloxacin, and I got my answer from this particular reference. This table provides you a list of the primary and alternative oral antibiotics for patients with acute uncomplicated pyelonephritis. I took this from the 2013-2014 complicated UTI guidelines by FISMID also, and I think there are other societies involved in the drafting of that particular guideline. So you have ciprofloxacin, levofloxacin, ofloxacin, and alternatives would be cefixime, cefuroxime, and even amoxicillin. So take note though that quinolones are not recommended as first-line treatment for acute uncomplicated pyelonephritis, not requiring hospital admission. Okay, and quinolones should not be used as first-line drug for uncomplicated cystitis or CAP, low risk despite their efficacy because of the high propensity for collateral damage. Diba? We use this quinolones as treatment for TB, and they can induce ESBL production. Now, so far as of yesterday, the Philippines has already recorded around 32,300 confirmed cases with 1,200 deaths of COVID-19. And we are not seeing much of a decline in terms of the trends that we want. And so the most recent recommendations are the following, di ba? Cebu City would have to stay in enhanced or under enhanced community quarantine, modified enhanced community quarantine naman sa Talisay City, and Metro Manila and other parts of the country would have to remain in general community quarantine. And the sad truth about COVID-19 is that we expect more people, family members, friends, loved ones, workmates, partners to get sick, but hopefully with the more information that we have, they will be able to overcome the disease. And another sad truth about COVID-19 is we don't expect life soon. Sabi nga ni Dr. Tayed kanina, di ba? The usual things that we do, yung fiesta together, eating together, having coffee, sa gabi after work, yung pagmamano sa mga lolo't lola natin, we might not be able to do that in the next few months or probably the next few years because the risk of COVID-19 acquisition still stays there. And so, for me, and for the purpose of the lecture this morning, actually the new normal is all about prevention of infection, the assimilation of infection and prevention control strategies into our daily living already. These are the things that we used to take for granted in the past, pero ngayon, it's actually a must already. The next few slides, I will just share with you some important points from this particular document, Infection Prevention and Control Guidelines for Outpatient Clinic Resumption. Some of you guys might have started your clinics already, and let's just try to see if, in general, what you're practicing in your outpatient clinics are safe, and are you prepared already to see this outpatient consultation. Take note that for all healthcare facilities, you should establish a triage system to screen patients seeking consult. For those patients na may respiratory symptoms, COVID suspect, they might have to be accommodated in other areas in your healthcare facility. Try to practice a no mask, no entry policy, and always encourage physical distancing, hand hygiene, respiratory etiquette at all times. Always perform hand washing and hand hygiene. This has been proven to be the most effective way to stop the spread of infection and diseases. The minimum PPE, according to the guidelines, would be face mask or N95 respirator. As face mask would suffice. Your N95 should be used if you intend to perform aerosol generating procedures inside your clinic. In general, yung mga dentists and the ENT practitioners, the pulmonologists, they have a tendency to be exposed to aerosols. And of course, goggles or face shields. And coming from that study that I showed you earlier, the benefit of face mask naman are the following, diba? So without the use of face mask, the risk of getting COVID-19 is at 17.4%. But if you use your face mask, then you can actually decrease 17.4% to 3.1%. And as far as eye protection, face shield or goggles are concerned, from 16% risk, you can bring down this risk to 5.5% if you use your eye protection. But make sure that when you use face shield, for example, there are a lot of this in the market, make sure that you do not touch the front surface, and also make sure that you disinfect the front surface frequently and regularly. Nag-grocery kayo, nag-clinic kayo, gumamit kayo ng face shield, make sure that after the clinic, you properly sanitize them. Okay. Additional PPE, clean, non-sterile gloves, and this would have to be changed after each patient. Okay? Hindi pwedeng one gloves lang for the rest of your clinic hours. This should be used when you are anticipating contact with blood and body fluids. Your surgical gown, you only wear this if you anticipate to do procedures with potential blood and body fluid exposure. Okay? I see a lot of physicians and other people wearing gloves. Okay? Technically, hindi naman siya bawal, pero it's not also recommended. So you have to be careful when you decide to wear your gloves in public, because I frequently see a lot of individuals naka-gloves nga, okay, pero they frequently touch their face, inaayos yung buhok, kung saan mahawak. Okay? So really the purpose of wearing the gloves ay put to waste. Remember that your gloves do not give you immunity nor permission to touch everything within your reach. And any germs that might be on your gloves can be transferred to all other surfaces that you touch. So it is useless to wear gloves, yet you continue to touch your plate, you rummage through your bag or text on your phone. Okay. So in case you will use your gloves, make sure that you still do not touch your face, you discard your gloves properly, hindi kung saan-saan, do not reuse your gloves, do not touch the outside when you are removing your gloves already, and remember that the use of gloves does not eliminate the need for hand hygiene or hand washing. So as soon as you remove your gloves, make sure that you perform hand washing and hand hygiene. Next, coveralls or hazmat suits, hair covers, and shoe covers are really not recommended inside the clinic. And these are just the cons against using your hazmat. It's really uncomfortable and it's hot, and there's no perceived additional benefit from you just using your level 3 PPEs when you go into your COVID area. It's expensive. It's prone to contamination when you do not doff this properly. So in case you will use your coveralls or hazmat suit, hindi pwedeng paggagamit nyo ng clinic, sasakay kayo ng nakasasakyan ng kotse nyo nang naka-complete PPE pa rin. You have to develop a mechanism for you to doff your PPEs inside the clinic. You have to designate a special area and also a mechanism on how you are going to wash and disinfect those PPEs. Otherwise, ikakalat lang ng PPEs na yon yung mga viruses or bacteria that you come in contact with. It requires cleaning. They may provide a false sense of security. And remember that there's shortage of PPE already. Okay, so we might have to divert these PPEs to really those in need of using these PPEs. Okay, so remember also that your bag, your LV is not part of your PPE. So don't miss the point. Okay, if you are going to use your personal protective equipment going to the clinic, then do away with all of those accessories. Okay, otherwise you have really to come up with your own mechanism not to contaminate other surfaces. Okay? Don't forget your immunizations, particularly flu, annual flu vaccine, and pneumococcal vaccination. The use of foot bath is actually optional, right? There is no evidence to recommend the use of foot bath. In case you will use your foot bath, make sure that you follow the instructions of the manufacturer. There is a recommended contact time, the amount of time that you would have to stepping on the mat. And there's also a recommended amount of time kung kailan dapat palitan yung disinfectant na nakalagay dun sa mat. Kasi kung masyado nang matagal yung disinfectant doon, then the risk of contamination also increases. Next, you have to maintain a good ventilation inside your clinic. 6 to 12 air changes per hour is recommended. And the way you do that is you just open your window. Okay? Just opening your window will actually significantly increase your ventilation. Consider using HEPA filter kung hindi nyo talaga kayang mag-install ng exhaust fan, or wala talagang bintana sa inyong area. The use of these plastic barriers, these are actually called cough or sneeze guards. And I know that most of you guys have ordered acrylic barriers already. Remember that proper and rational PPE use, hand hygiene, physical distancing, these are still the primary strategies that you would have to practice when you resume your clinic. But these additional barriers, acrylic barriers, if you will use them, make sure that you regularly and properly clean and disinfect them. Okay. UV lights also. So this is an example of a hospital grade UV light, while the other picture is a picture of a portable UV sterilizer. Take note that when you purchase this UV light, make sure that you check the specifications. The maximum bactericidal effect occurs at wavelength UVC of 240 to 280 nanometers. You need to avoid shadowing. You need to make sure that the UV light reaches your target surface without any obstruction. Kasi if the UV light does not reach the target surface because of shadowing, then the UV light is unable to perform the disinfection function. So when you use your UV light, it's an adjunctive strategy to standard disinfection procedures. Make sure that you follow manufacturer's guidelines, and safety precautions should be followed. Don't look into the light directly, and make sure that as much as possible, try not to come in contact with the UV light, especially the high-powered UV light, because they can cause skin and eye irritation. The use of portable HEPA filters, some physicians have already purchased this also. Ang ibig sabihin ng HEPA is high efficiency particulate air filter. Okay? It's designed to improve air quality by filtering the particulates. So the recommendation tells us that the use of these HEPA filters provide additional benefits in improving air quality, especially in settings where adequate ventilation cannot be achieved. If HEPA filters will be used, you have to ensure that you follow the manufacturer's operating protocols. The right size of the HEPA filter that is recommended to the size of your room. Okay, so a need for you to frequently replace your HEPA filter, yung frequency depende sa manufacturer. And this is just a checklist for you guys. You can take a screenshot of this, more or less, to assess kung yung clinic nyo ba is safe already for operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. So, is there screening, triage, and a system for isolation of patients? Is your staff prepared? Okay, have you screened your staff? Have you immunized them? Okay, do you have IPC engineering controls in your clinic? Meron ba kayo mga hand hygiene and hand washing facilities? Are there garbage cans? Is your clinic ventilation adequate? Do you need any adjunctive strategies to improve clinic structure? UV light, HEPA filter? Do I have or do I follow some form of administrative control inside your clinic or hospital? Do you have strategies to optimize distancing in available spaces, improving patient flow? Yung upuan ba ay hiwa-hiwalay? Do you have enough stocks of your PPE? And when we say PPE, appropriate PPE. And do you know how to clean already? So, just to summarize some of the things that I have shared with you earlier about the new normal in clinic resumption, I have this quote, sa COVID-19 may batas. Bawal ang close contact o bawal ang close contact. Pero pag sinabi, pag nag-comply ka sa physical distancing, hand hygiene at infection control measures, pero nagsuot ka ng PPE para hindi ma-expose sa kanya, sa contact, inayos mo yung clinic mo, at nag-triage ka ng symptomatic patient, ay iwasan pa rin natin syempre lumabas as part of the general community quarantine measure. But seriously, to summarize, not all patients with suspect or confirmed COVID-19 cases will require antibiotics. You have to follow CAP and UTI guidelines on when to start and what antibiotics to start. Remember that other non-COVID-19 patients require our medical attention already. And so, as we begin to see them, we need to protect ourselves and others as we continue to live in the COVID-19 era. So that's hand washing and hand hygiene, the use of masks and proper PPE, physical distancing, clinic ventilation improvement, and the use of adjunctive strategies if necessary. So remember that COVID-19 is not a death sentence. We now realize the value of some of the things we used to take for granted before, di ba? Beso-beso, hugging, pagmamano. But our lives would have to move on. The new normal may be a bitter pill to swallow, but we need to play our role in winning over COVID-19, whether as frontliner, as homeliner, or whatever role that we play. Good luck and good health to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roman. And for our next speaker, she graduated from the University of the East Ramon Magsaysay Memorial Medical Center. And she actually rose from the ranks from the Department of Health and is now with PhilHealth. She's the Vice President for Medical Affairs for PhilHealth. Please welcome Dr. Shirley Domingo.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, I was assigned a topic on PhilHealth care for doctors in the new normal. But since I'm very sorry, I tried to catch the lecture of Dr. Tayag, but when I was finally connected, they were saying already thank you to him. So I did catch that new normal lecture of Dr. Tayag. But anyway, PhilHealth care for doctors in the new normal means we have to talk a little about the new normal. So I thought of coming out with another topic for the first part of this lecture, and it's finding the new normal in financing health services. For easy memory, it's for me, it's finding NEMA. You see on your screen some pictures that I got from Finding Nemo. You see Bruce, the big white shark, na very scary siya, but in the end, very friendly shark pala siya, no? With the big backdrop of the next big medical crisis, it is important to finance the strengthening of curative care. And I think we got that lesson from this current pandemic, especially strengthening healthcare delivery networks, no? Working together to be able to achieve a integrated approach to medical challenges in the future. That's Crash, the 150-year-old turtle in that movie. And the reason I put that in is because we are still confronted with age-old issues such as TB, malaria, re-emerging diseases now such as polio. It still causes debility. Thus, there's a need to put more resources into preventing these diseases or primary health care. So the journey towards universal health care. We all know and heard about the Universal Health Care Act that was signed into law last year. And now as we go into the new normal, this will be now the backdrop. The new normal will be the backdrop as we continue on implementing universal health care. Okay. This was the third picture that I was missing earlier. But before that universal healthcare slide, this just shows that every day there are small medical challenges that we have to address and fund, especially through other means such as a public-private partnerships. We have to strengthen these strategies, learn from the pandemic, and look at how we implement integrated health networks within geographical areas or even within functional areas and all that. But I'll be talking about that later on. And therefore, what are the lessons we learned from the pandemic? Because this will be applying now to our new normal, which is, again, as I mentioned earlier, the backdrop by which we'll be implementing universal health care. One, and I think everybody will agree with this, is government cannot do it alone. We have to go into a public-private partnership to address any future medical challenges that will come our way. And one of these will be the next strategy, which is strengthening connectivity within our health system. Hindi pwede yung government ito and private lang ito. We have to connect with each other and fight any challenges coming our way as one health system. The next lesson, I think, would be accountability to self and accountability to the community. And I think this was one area wherein that was emphasized during this pandemic, because accountability to ourselves, such as distancing, some even mentioned cough ethics and all that. It's not only to the self, but to the community. Because nakita natin, no, maraming hindi nagmamask here and abroad, thinking they have their rights to do whatever they want. But then their rights ends wherein the community is also involved, because the effect of this pandemic is not only with the community, with the self, but also it will affect the community. Therefore, decisions such as not using mask or donning PPEs in other situations, I don't think that is a decision that to be made yourself, but it should be the decision with the community good in mind. So let's go back to healthy lifestyles and preventive care. As the previous speaker said, the most important thing talaga in this pandemic was washing your hands. No, that's very important para hindi tumuloy ang transmission of the diseases. That's simple. Just wash your hands, distancing, etc. We also learned, and this was a very costly lesson, that health and economy are bedfellows. We should put money into improving our health systems, the health sector as a whole. Dapat we put money into that, and that's not only for future, but now we should start doing that, improving our health system delivery. So last, we learned that we should communicate. We learn from communication, because right now we have a lot of webinars, local and abroad, which was organized para ma-arm natin ang ating health workers in this fight against this invisible enemy. Communicate, learn. I think that's a very important lesson we got. So let's talk now about universal health care. I know my topic was about health workers and their care, but it's very important to see, because the universal health care will be the new normal in these coming weeks or months and years. Actually, we will be implementing provisions of universal health care. Therefore, let me talk about, I'll give you a few slides on understanding universal health care. Universal health care, according to World Health Organization, is the universal coverage, is defined as ensuring that all people have access to needed health services, including prevention, promotion, treatment, rehabilitation, and palliative services of sufficient quality to be effective, while also ensuring that the use of these services does not expose the user to financial hardship. And I think we just remember three words here: access, quality, financial hardship. Because these three keywords is all about the provisions and the reforms as put into our own Universal Healthcare Act, or the Law of Universal Healthcare. So let me just show this slide, and it is a one slide that will tell all most of the provisions in the Universal Healthcare Act. So just this one slide. As I said, the Universal Healthcare talked about equity, quality, and affordability. And hindi lang siya lip service, but if you look closely at the provisions of this act, it contains provisions of how to address and how to achieve these three key indicators of universal health care. Equity, they talked about allocation of bed capacities for no co-payment schemes, especially for those who cannot afford. It talked about bringing services to GIDA areas, which is geographically isolated and desolated areas, such as grants for networks that will be put up in GIDA areas, grants and incentives, so that services that are brought to GIDA areas will be incentivized, preferential licensing for underserved areas, As to quality for services, goods, and devices, third-party accreditation, health technology assessment, contracting, using quality as indicators, licensing and regulatory systems. CPGs was already institutionalized in this law. CPGs for clinical care. Of course, that's nothing new, and I'm sure the clinical people will agree that they have been doing CPGs already in their areas. They've been forming CPGs, but now it's in the law, and it just signals the importance of this strategy for putting quality care. The most important thing, and this is the concern of PhilHealth, is the affordability of services. So we talk about affordable inpatient services through provisions of co-payment schemes, benefit rationalization and complementation between the DOH, PhilHealth, private health institutions, and the HMOs, and most importantly, affordable drugs and medicines. Based on our database, the biggest object by far in the cost of healthcare is drugs and medicines. Masyado pong mataas dito sa ating bansa. Therefore, we are trying to bring down the cost of drugs and medicines through provisions such as the National Price Reference Index, availability of generics, fixed markups, transparent pricing and price monitoring, and independent price negotiation boards. So all of that is in the law. So this is one slide that will show everything in the law. The most important feature of that law, for us at least, for PhilHealth, is the strategy of a social health insurance scheme. And just to refresh our minds on what the social health insurance is, it is a scheme for mobilizing and utilizing resources based on the values of solidarity and shared responsibility for healthcare needs. So part of it is risk pooling and risk sharing. Therefore, we're able to bring down the cost of premiums for such a scheme, and it finances the healthcare needs of our members. So what is the universal healthcare for a PhilHealth member? What is its effect? One is everybody will be assigned to a primary care provider, and that will be a very important step because everyone will now have the capacity or the access to a primary care provider just in case they need health services. So the healthcare provider, the primary care provider, will be the first contact of everyone and will help navigate them if they need higher levels of care. Secondly is everyone is automatically a member and with immediate eligibility. Because of this immediate eligibility, I think this was already seen very much during this pandemic, because even people who did not have updated premium contributions were able to access health services paid for by PhilHealth. So that's because of the Universal Healthcare Law of Immediate Eligibility. Also, we had, sorry about that. We had the establishment of healthcare provider networks for easy navigation. As I already mentioned this earlier. And also healthcare spending. So I can't see the last because there's something covered, but it's healthcare spending will become predictable if we will be able to implement the whole universal healthcare law as designed. So let's go now to what is the implications of the universal healthcare for a healthcare provider. So for a healthcare provider, which is what the topic of this webinar is all about, the primary care network that I mentioned earlier should have patient records. It will be available throughout the health system, and therefore for the health service delivery system, we will see the emphasis now on primary care as compared to curative care. The integrated province citywide healthcare provider networks. So this is a major provision of the law, and I will talk about the implication of this later on. Differential payment schemes to be given due consideration to service quality, efficiency, and equity. So performance also lastly performance driven close-ended prospective payment scheme will be implemented as a payment mechanism for healthcare providers. So this is what we call the global budget as we hear it. So what are the implications of a universal healthcare on healthcare workers? One is the emphasis on primary healthcare will give rise to a new breed of practitioners, and these are the primary care providers. And in fact, the law says, mentions, I'm sorry, the law mentions that in 10 years' time, this will be to be able to practice as a primary care providers. The DOH and PRC should be certifying these primary care providers. That's 10 years time. You're given 10 years to implement this because they're also supposed to come out with formal training programs for primary healthcare providers and then accrediting them later on. Secondly, PhilHealth's engagement with healthcare providers now will be through contracting. And this will effectively institutionalize payment for quality and efficiency. Because during the contracting mechanism, we will be able to negotiate for services that are of quality and we'll be able to promote efficiency in the way we provide services. So this is what we hope for when we do contracting. The third, shift to prospective payment schemes, such as the global budget, will shift accountability for professional payment to health institutions. Because we will be paying global budget, we will be paying the health institutions through a global budget, then it will be up to them now to be able to pay the different cost centers within their hospitals. And lastly, preferential payment schemes will promote equitable distribution of health services and encourage practice, especially in GIDA areas or far-flung areas. So how will providers be paid? PhilHealth shall endeavor to shift to paying providers using performance-driven, close-ended prospective payments based on disease or diagnosis-related groupings and validated costing methodologies without differentiating facility and professional fees. So actually, I already talked about this earlier. And just to show you how we will be paying, there will be at one time, because I said napaka-importante yung integration of healthcare services at either the provincial or the city level. So this is there will be at one time, this will not happen all at once, therefore, at one point, there will be some local government units that are already integrated, and we call this the healthcare provider networks. And there will be some that will still not be integrated. So this will be non-HCPN. And as to inpatient services, the way we pay those already integrated will be a global budget payment, including the Z benefits, while those that are not yet integrated will still be paid the usual case rates payment. Catchment areas under an integrated provider network will be pre-assigned. We will be assigning each Filipino to their healthcare providers, the primary healthcare providers, and this will be all Filipinos. While in those not non-healthcare provider networks, pre-assignment right now, after that's happening now, was limited to indigents, sponsored senior citizens. And provider engagement is through network providing, if it's already a healthcare provider network, while in non-networks, it will still be through accreditation. So reimbursements will be all case rates for non-UIS, and the facility professional fees can still be paid through facility, but in a prospective payment global budget, there will be no differentiation in facility and professional fees. So it will be given as a whole. In the universal healthcare, they also emphasize the formation of an HTA, health technology assessment process. Therefore, all existing benefit packages shall continue to be implemented. However, those that will be enhanced or new benefits will go through the HTA process. So if PhilHealth comes out with a new benefits for our members and our healthcare providers, then it has to pass through an HTA process. PhilHealth shall issue also the necessary guidelines on additional program benefits for direct contributors. So the healthcare providers now listening, kung kayo ay direct contributors, which you are, we will be coming out with additional program benefits in time because that is mandated by the law. As to outpatient benefits, we'll be implementing a comprehensive outpatient benefit, including an outpatient drug benefit and an emergency medical services in accordance with recommendations of the Health Technology Assessment Committee. So we call this consulta, and we will be implementing this. We'll be orienting our healthcare providers on this. This was all planned before the pandemic started. It's being delayed in a way, but it's still continuing. Groundwork for this is still continuing, and therefore we will be accrediting healthcare providers who want to join in as providers, and performance targets will be talked about. Access, utilization to primary care will be the first key indicator. And then provision of preventive screening services by these providers, and the coverage as to medicines. And hopefully this will lead to improved health outcomes of everyone. I think this was very important lesson in the pandemic because we saw that the napaka-importante yung primary health care. Prevention, healthy lifestyles, all of this was brought to fore during this pandemic. So tamang-tama itong consulta nito that we plan to implement. So lastly, let me just talk about the benefits under pandemic. I'm sure all of you know about this. Let me just remind you about this. Health workers are included in priority testing, and therefore when you go out and do testing, we have a benefit package for that, and I can talk about that later on. So healthcare workers with COVID symptoms, this is the subgroup A and C. By the way, the Department of Health came out with a updated prioritization for testing. Healthcare providers are there in most subgroups, in all subgroups, in most subgroups. Let me remind you that bills of hospitalized health workers that are due to COVID shall still be completely paid for by PhilHealth. We came out with an announcement early during the pandemic that from February 1 to April 14, we will be answering the whole bill of our healthcare provider of all people who are hospitalized because of COVID, including our healthcare providers. Starting April 15, we will pay case rate. But this is not true for the healthcare workers because even after April 14, we will still be paying the full cost of hospitalization of our healthcare workers if they are hospitalized due to COVID. We came out with an updated testing package recently. So for if all services is procured and provided for, this is 3,409. Test kits are donated. If test kits are donated to the lab, this is 2,077. And if test kits are donated plus cost of running the lab is not within the budget of the facility, then 901 pesos for a test. Testing laboratories must be certified by DOH, accredited by PhilHealth. No co-payment shall be charged to the patients, and all items donated by third parties shall not be charged by the patient. We had a partnership with Red Cross, and PhilHealth signed a memorandum with the Red Cross for COVID testing, and we have paid more than around 200 million already for this, just to be sure that we are helping out, also putting our resources into a very important strategy to fight the pandemic, which is testing. I talked about this full financial risk protection for our health workers, even after the April 14 set for full payment of PhilHealth. Our health workers continue to enjoy no co-payment in public-private facility. Dapat, kung alam nyo yon, that you should insist on that in all facilities, no co-payment, because we will pay for the full bill for healthcare workers confined because of COVID. This is our existing inpatient case rates for pneumonia. For COVID cases, mild pneumonia 43,997, up to the critical pneumonia, which is 786,384. The COVID-19 community isolation package also, we are also putting resources into those that needs community isolation because of mild symptoms of COVID, and we are paying a maximum of 22,449 for cases that has to be isolated. Single period of confinement, I'm sure the providers knows about this, which was being implemented before, and the limit of 45 days under this pandemic will not be implemented anymore. So that means that even if they were confined less than 90 days of the same conditions, we will continue to pay. 45-day limits a year also will be lifted. Even if they're confined 45 days for one confinement, they can still be confined even after 45 days. And we will still pay for that. So I think that was my last slide. This for me is a very interesting slide, because my new normal is continually getting used to new normals. We will continue to have new challenges our way. We will continue to try and solve medical crisis. I hope not as big as this, because it takes a toll on our resources if we are unprepared. Therefore, I think my message, my parting message is that we have to be prepared now. We have to do health system reforms, and this was emphasized during our experience this pandemic. And everything, all the reforms that we hope to achieve is in that Universal Healthcare Act. And therefore, I encourage you to look at this, look and study the reforms in this Universal Healthcare Act, because I hope together we will be able to reform our health system and move towards a more effective and quality health services for all our Filipinos. With that, thank you very much, and kudos to all of you healthcare providers out there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dakota. Now, we do have some questions coming in. We'll try to see if we can ask our speakers the whole lot, but depending on the time frame, we'll start with, I think, with Dr. Tayag. Sir, may we know, in your assessment, have we flattened the curve?
Good morning.
Hi, sir. We have a question here. May we know, in your assessment, have we flattened the curve?
Okay, that's a difficult question. When we look at the national epidemic curve, okay, the number of cases being reported are not showing significant decrease. When I estimated the doubling time on a 3-day running average. It's now at 28 days. We want it to be more than 30 days. And if it approaches 70 days, that means we have approached a reproductive number of 1 or less than 1. So in that aspect, it's it kind of in the gray area. Now, in terms of the other aspect of the flattening the curve, the capacity of the health system to adapt or cope, 36% or up to 40% utilization of our ICUs, meaning while there's a variance in different hospitals, especially in Cebu, where they have a problem now, the Philippines is at least able to cope. We also look at the deaths. And so we have over 1,200, 1,204 deaths. The case fatality have been going down. The recovery rates the recovered patients are increasing. And it's a gray area. The jury is out there. And we are crunching the numbers. And the IATF will look into this and have another announcement whether or not, for example, Metro Manila will have another extended GCQ, or we downsize it to a modified GCQ. Over.
Thank you, sir. As far as the teleconsults and telemedicine is concerned, how is the perception so far as the doctors are concerned, and as far as the patients themselves trying to get hold of teleconsults and telemedicine, sir?
Okay, the concerns of the doctors, maybe Dr. Gigi, is that they will link this to any field health benefits. That's what we're getting from them, and that they would tell us, for example, that they want to be trained, and that they are concerned with the connectivity because not all areas in the country have a stable or connectivity that we have one of the poor speeds in connectivity in this region. And from the patients, they really are adapting to it. We thought it would be, they would be uneasy with the telemedicine platforms that we have introduced, but slowly they are adapting it, and our hotline platform for telemedicine is for random patients. The second stage will be actually for COVID-19 primary care services, linking it to electronic medical records. So now we're doing it in the grassroots, and then we're introducing virtual consultation video where you can see actually the patients in a network, okay? And then the last stages will be using equipment or remote consultations with equipment. So that's our timeline for the next 18 months. Slowly hindi binibigla, and we have a project in Quezon City, and we'd like to thank the PMA, okay, for the volunteers for the telemedicine. There are several versions. Pwede sa hotline, pwede sa apps. So sa apps, baka may subscription, pero sa amin, no toll charges up to now, and then walang charges sa consultations. Over.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. To Dr. Roman, sir, lately every employee with colds or cough are being sent home. Should they be isolated for 14 days, or is it okay for them to come back to work not completing the 14-day isolation?
This is really a difficult question considering the limited manpower, for example, in hospitals or in offices. Technically, when you are symptomatic, it's recommended that you are put on home quarantine for 14 days. But one of the possible strategies is if you do have access to RT-PCR, well, you can get tested for COVID-19 using RT-PCR and it turns out negative. Then once you are asymptomatic, you can go back to work earlier than 14 days.
Okay. We have another one, sir, from Dr. Anupol. I have a pediatric patient who is asymptomatic, but already has a 5th PT-PCR swab positive in 1 month period. What are your thoughts on his capability to infect others if he is asymptomatic but swab positive?
Good morning, Doctora. Thank you for the question. I think this is really a common experience, not only for pediatric patients, even for adult patients. Now we have to remember that your RT-PCR is actually not a test. And the most recent recommendation by the Department of Health to tell us that it's not recommended anymore to repeat any testing for confirmed cases. It's not recommended for us to document negative RT-PCR because remember that your RT-PCR detects portions of the virus, but it does not necessarily tell us whether the virus is still live and infected or not. There are studies that would tell us that beyond 8.5 days from the onset of symptoms, yung mga viruses that were taken from these patients are already not culturable, and the assumption there is they're dead already, and so the risk of transmission is really low already.
I think this is a question from Dr. Valte. If a patient is allergic to Erythromycin, what's the next antibiotic of choice? I guess this is for the respiratory tract, sir.
Yeah, if for the respiratory tract infection, then alternatives would be your quinolones, levofloxacin, or doxycycline, which would have a typical coverage. Because I think that's what we are trying to cover with azithromycin for respiratory infection.
Thank you, sir. I think I have another question for Dr. Domingo. The PHIC benefits should depend on the premium being paid similar to HMOs. Is this possible, Doctora?
We've heard several feedback to that effect, but as I showed you the slide earlier on the social health insurance scheme, that can be true for a private health insurance, but for a social health insurance scheme, the basic package, benefit package should be the same actually for all. But under Universal Healthcare Act, there was a provision there which I mentioned that for those who are paying directly, because kung tutusin, everybody is paid for. Kaya lang, dun sa mga indirect contributors, they're also being paid for, but through the national government. But those who are directly paying should have additional benefits, which we are developing at the moment. And we will also be coming out with the supplemental benefits. This is for those who want supplemental additional benefits outside of the basic benefits. We will be coming out with such a package.
Doctora, the cost of laboratories, another question, are also expensive, and these are required laboratory tests before we can claim from PhilHealth, like blood and sputum cultures for patients with pneumonia. Should we look back again and see if these tests are really prerequisite to claims?
Actually, we are paying as a case rate. Therefore, the details such as that will really depend on those who are managing the case. Kasi case rate. We are requesting only for specific billing statements so that we can continuously monitor the cost of managing a COVID patient, and we can continuously update our case rates. But the specifics of managing the case, we leave that to the healthcare provider.
Thank you, Paul. We have one scenario actually occurring. A patient was admitted for elective surgery. A pre-op COVID test was done prior to the actual surgery. The COVID RT-PCR test came out positive. The patient was in the asymptomatic stage. She was then discharged. Will PhilHealth cover repeat testing on readmission?
We will cover readmission because I said earlier, the 45-day limit or the single period of confinement is lifted, waived during this pandemic. And therefore, if the patient needs to be readmitted for related to COVID, then we will cover his hospitalization cost up to the case rate that is applicable to his or her condition.
What about if you are a doctor with a small clinic, but not hospital based, and you are hospitalized due to COVID? Will you be covered as well?
They are, yes, because they are still healthcare workers, and under the law, we are supposed to cover the full hospitalization cost of healthcare workers.
I'd like to ask this question to, I think, either Dr. Tayag or Dr. Roman. Do we have a study already if you already have immunity after COVID-19 infection?
We don't have much evidence about that yet. So there have been reported documentation of immunoglobulin production, presence of neutralizing antibody production against COVID-19, but as far as the effectiveness of these neutralizing antibodies and how long they persist in the blood of previously infected patients, we don't know that yet.
Okay. The antibodies stay only for a short time when you actually look for them, when you do the rapid test, for example. And there is also no evidence that there might be reinfection, but there are protocols because the experts are anticipating that there may be repeated infections. And what we're saying here, Des and I, what we're saying here is that there is much more to know about the virus. So we don't have the complete knowledge about the virus. So slowly, what the virus can and cannot become are being revealed slowly, so that those colleagues of ours in this meeting, if you have to share new information that can elucidate how the virus behaves even after a patient has recovered, this is very much welcome. Over.
What about, sir, the test kits made by UP? Is there any current status po?
I do not have the information. I'm sorry, but
Me too, I don't have the
maybe
information.
Dash have information.
No, wala din, sir.
Thank you very much. What about UV lights? I think, Dr. Rahman, are the use of UV lights and HEPA filters proven to be effective specifically against COVID-19 or just in disinfection in general?
As I've said earlier during my first slide, envelope virus kasi ang SARS coronavirus 2 causing your COVID-19. So a lot of your disinfectants, including your UV light, would actually be effective in killing the virus. As far as using it for disinfection, there is some evidence that you can use it, but our statement would tell us that it's an adjunctive strategy on top of what is known to be proven, and that's your routine disinfection with your proven disinfectant such as chlorine solution.
Can I add something about this UV light?
Yes, sir.
Because
Yes,
there
please.
are many being marketed now. There are topicals claim for UV light. You don't use this harms the skin. And for those using UV light in establishments, okay, there must be a requirement that there are no persons within the premises when these are used. And so this has to be monitored. I agree with Des in the health setting where UV light is used. We can use the traditional soap and water, the other disinfectants. But bigger hospitals are using UV light because it cuts short the time to actually disinfect a particular space or area, but we should caution patients or individuals to come in again in these areas where there's exposure to UV light at least half an hour or 1 hour before they are allowed to get in. People should be careful because it can harm the eyes and the skin. Over.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, I have another question regarding the teleconsults and telemedicine. There was a guideline released by PMA last June 15, 2020, stating that consultation via SMS or texting is strictly discouraged unless it is for life-saving purposes. This then implies teleconsultation is not based or is not allowed based on this PMA guideline. Can you comment on this, sir?
While the PMA guidelines make sense, we should understand na hindi lahat ng kababayan natin merong smartphone. Yung iba kaya lang yung SMS kasi yung connectivity nila, wala naman silang connectivity o kaya wala naman silang load. That's why kami sa DOH hindi kami masyadong stricto doon. What we can do is actually monitor it. Anyway, kung nag-text naman yung pasyente, tayo na siguro yung tumawag so that we can the patient rather than sa pagte-text lang. So, this is evolving. Bigla yung new normal natin ay telemedicine. Pag-aralan natin to. And we can learn from the experience. Ipagbigay nyo alam sa amin yung mga experience nyo so we can improve. Wala pang actual regulation dito so we need help sa PMA. Sa ibang bansa kasi may credentialing at certification ng health provider na involved sa telemedicine. Tayo dito, maluwag tayo, pinapayagan muna natin because of the situation that we have. Over.
Thank you very much, sir. I think we have a lot of questions, but I have only time for one more for Dr. Domingo. Doctora, is PhilHealth's coverage for hospitalization expenses of HCW regardless of which hospital they are confined in?
Yes. Public or private hospitals, we will be answering the full bill of a healthcare provider who will be hospitalized due to COVID. So the answer is yes.
Talaga pong kasi kasi nga po sabi nga po ni Director, we welcome already the concept of stay safe. Kaya po namin siya work out para mag...
Thank you. Thank you po. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our speakers, Dr. Tayag, Dr. Roman, and Dr. Domingo. We don't have much time for any of all of these other questions, but rest assured we will be sending them to our speakers, and as soon as we have their answers, we will email them back to you. And this ends our plenary session, and we do encourage you to proceed to the breakout sessions. Remember, you have to log out or leave the room and then enter your choice of specialization for the breakout sessions. Again, we have one for surgery, one for medicine, one for pediatrics, and another one for obstetrics and gynecology. You leave the plenary session and then proceed to entering your choice of specialty for the breakout sessions. And after which, please visit our booths. We have 6 of them. Each and every booth or company actually has their own talks, lectures, even gimmicks, surprises, and prizes. And if you do attend all of them, you do get a raffle coupon for another prize as long as you attend all of these 6 all of these 6 booths that we do have here. That's the difference with the convention or conference that we do have now. And for Quezon City Medical Society members, we do have a QCMS hour later at 12 noon. You can also visit and join us and press on that link. So this is for the plenary session. We hope to see you at the breakout sessions for surgery, medicine, pediatrics, and obstetrics and gynecology.
panahon ngayon, ano ang alagang Pilipino? Ito ay alagang hindi makasarili. Alagang laging gumagawa ng paraan. Alagang nagkakaisa para sa bawat isa. Alagang handa sa anumang hamon. Alagang ramdam kahit saan ka man. Alagang maaasahan. Alagang nagbibigay ng solusyon at mga ngiti. Alagang busog sa pagmamahal. Yan ang alagang Pilipino. Alagang may husay at malasakit. Alagang nagbabayanihan. Nakikiisa ang Unilab sa lahat ng Pilipinong walang sawang nagbibigay ng alaga para sa kalusugan ng bayan. Alagang tunay, alagang Pilipino.
Good afternoon, doctors, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Quezon City Medical Society Hour. To tell you more about the Quezon City Medical Society Hour, I would like to call the man who conceptualized and worked hard for to come to reality. The overall chair of the PMA QCMS.
Thank you very much, Dr. Matula. Good afternoon. Today, we made history. The Quezon City Medical Society has pioneered in organizing this virtual meeting synonymous to a convention for all doctors of the land. This will be marked in the history of the Philippine Medical Association that the QCMS is the first medical society to organize an online convention. With the support of our partner, Unilab, Quezon City Medical Society, headed by the President, Dr. Lilibeth Pascual Nagit, its Vice President, Dr. Michael de Guzman, Secretary, Dr. Teresita Agda, and all society officers, district officers, and secretariat who made this meeting possible. It is through the hard work of these people, plus the untiring support of our moderators, like Dr. Rylan Flores, Dr. Jose Antonio Matulac, Dr. Mercy Agustin, Dr. Carla Chua, and our secretariat, Miss Christy, Ella, and Ellen. Initially, we have planned this meeting to gather at least 500 doctors to attend this virtual meeting. But to our amazement, before we have started this meeting, we have garnered 1,699 attendees, making this meeting a tremendous success. I hope that this kind of event will be a continuous annual event of the Quezon City Medical Society. This meeting features the President's report for her term 2019 to 2020, the induction of the officer in charge or the new president in charge, the turnover ceremony, and the future plans of the incoming president. By the power vested upon me as the governor of the Quezon City region, I formally open this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tagle. And now to give her valedictory address, it is my pleasure to call on our very passionate and dedicated QCMS President for 2019-2020, Dr. Maria Lilibet Pascual Nagi.
The Philippine Medical Association President, Dr. Jose Santiago Jr., our PMA Governor for Quezon City Region, Dr. Wilfredo Tagle, our past Quezon City Medical Society presidents, the members of our executive board, the team from the Unilab, colleagues and friends, magandang buhay, a pleasant afternoon to everyone. It seemed just yesterday when the past president of the Philippine Medical Women's Association and PMA Governor for Quezon City Region, Dr. Angela Cruz, administered my oath as the 67th Quezon City Medical Society President. By God's grace today, we have finally reached the end for fiscal year 2019-2020. This year might have been ushered by a number of disasters, calamities, government issues, and eventually the COVID-19 pandemic. But through the divine intervention and the bayanihan spirit shared by you, my dear Quezon City Medical Society family, we have finally pulled through to continue to pray, serve, and heal as one. With the time allotted to me, may I respectfully summarize the highlights of these year-long activities. We had 8 live monthly executive board meetings and 4 virtual ones, 8 regional council meetings, 3 council of presidents meetings, 17 QCMS different committee meetings, 43 scientific symposia, and 291 community development projects. We likewise had 2 research paper contests, the 22nd QCMS Pediatric Inter-Hospital Research Paper Contest, and the 4th Cancer Poster and Case Presentation Contest. We had 7 organizing committee meetings for our supposed to be 36th annual convention, but which was unfortunately canceled because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We had 4 postgraduate activities assisted by the QCMS, 2 sports fest, the first Quezon City Medical Society Inter-Hospital Basketball Tournament, and the Inter-District Bowling Tournament. On July 11 to 12, 2019, we had our 2-day Live-In Leadership Seminar and Strategic Planning at the Seda Vertis North with Dr. Ricardo Costes as the overall facilitator. We formally started our year having courtesy calls to the different dignitaries and personalities in the local government units and non-governmental organizations in Quezon City, with whom we forged memoranda of understanding to align our activities with, namely the Quezon City Mayor Honorable Joy Belmonte, Quezon City Vice Mayor the Honorable Gian Soto, the Quezon City Health Department Head Dr. Esperanza Arias, Quezon City Nutrition Department through Ms. Phoebe Anyo, Quezon City Anti-Drug Abuse Advisory Council through Dr. Angela Cruz, the principals of the different public schools in Quezon City, medical directors of Quezon City government hospitals, the barangay chair of the 3 adopted barangays, namely Barangay Baisa, Barangay Talipapa, Barangay Toro Hills, and we had the school communities as our venue for our child advocacy. Nutrition, environmental, and sanitation projects. We continued giving immunizations such as MMR, measles, oral polio, and HPV. We went as far as going to the malls to increase the number of beneficiaries. Likewise, deworming and oral vitamin A were given. To support Republic Act 10871, which is an act requiring basic education students to undergo age-appropriate basic life support training, we partnered with the East Avenue Medical Center, Department of Medicine, Emergency Medicine chaired by Dr. Veronica Datingginoo, who brought her 20-member team to some 7 public elementary schools to teach the hands-only CPR. And we were able to give workshops to a close to 8,000 public students, after which certificate of completion were issued. Lay fora on teenage pregnancy, HIV, drug addiction, and reproductive health were likewise given to these students. Book donations were given to Placido Elementary School and the L.R. Pascual Elementary School. A TV monitor was donated to Leopoldo Santos Elementary School during our Christmas gift giving. And insect repellent plants were donated by the DENR through Dr. Dean Señorosa, our Environmental and Sanitation Committee Chair, which were distributed and planted along the premises of the public schools in response to the then outbreak of dengue. We set up tarpaulins emphasizing plastic segregation and distributed tumblers to these public school children to help minimize and eventually eradicate the use of plastic straw in Quezon City, with the kind support of District 2 President Dr. Vicky de la Cruz. On October 15, 2019, which is the Global Hand Washing Day, the different district officers joined me to visit public schools to demonstrate proper hand washing technique and its benefits to health. Among these were Dr. Carla Esquivias Chua, Dr. Franklin Gali, Dr. Dean Señorosa, Dr. Mike Meresigan, and Dr. Arnold Montero. On November 19, 2019, which is the National Toilet Day, we donated tiles and toilet bowl to the school clinic of Plaza de Del Mundo Elementary School. With me are Doctors Angela Cruz, Norma Torregosa, Victoria de la Cruz, Colonel Joel Torregosa, the President of the Auxiliary to the Quezon City Medical Society. Feeding programs were set up. Milk feeding was done in Rojas District Elementary School, initiated by Dr. Carla Esquivas Chua and her team from Capital Medical Center, and they monitored initial height and weight before the program started and every month later. We had the Teen Walk to Health project. This was done in different districts in Quezon City through the cooperation of the health center physicians, Drs. Alder Montero, Mike Meresigan, Karen C., and Shane Marte, where the parent and child together walk together through the different posters depicting the different stages in their physical, psychological, and emotional growth, while discussing to each other the difficulties and solutions they encounter. To our PMA Governor for Quezon City Region, Dr. Wilfredo Tagle, I admire your determination and strong will to push through with all our projects, especially this morning's Regional Assembly you organized against all odds. Thank you for the respect and encouragement to make me work at my best, and I can never forget your always happy and positive disposition, and your favorite phrase, relax ka lang. To our past QCMS presidents headed by Dr. Realisa Henson, I am humbled by your words of encouragement, your precious time shared, and enthusiasm to work with us. To our dear Executive Board, our immediate past President, Dr. Mercedes Agustin, our Vice President, Dr. Michael de Guzman, Secretary, Dr. Arnold Montero, Treasurer, Dr. Rebecca Sison, Auditor, Dr. Agnes Calleja, PRO, Dr. Teresita Agda, and Protocol Officer, Dr. Joanne Matulak, and likewise our district officers, committee chairs, and members. I thank you for the unity and camaraderie. To our three hardworking secretaries, Christy, Ellen, and Ella, thank you for the patience and dedication. And to our dear Philippine Medical Association President, Dr. Jose Santiago Jr., you are such a good model of deep faith, humility, and perseverance to all of us. To my family, my siblings, Doctors Rene and Lorna Mendoza, and Doctors Wilfredo and Lorceli Parado, our children, Christian, Therese and Todd, Shini, Lizette, Hannah, and first apo, Lucia Daniel, and most of all, to my best half, not only my better half, my husband, Dr. Luisito Nagit. You are all my life, my inspiration, my ever loyal fans, the reason for my being, the hope to help me carry on. I know I can never thank you enough. And to my beloved parents who are now in heaven, and I'm sure they're happy watching over us, Dr. Mariano Pascual, a past Quezon City Medical Society President, and Dr. Concordia Pascual, a past Philippine Medical Association President. With all affection and pride, to you I offer my humble achievements. And to my incoming officers, keep in mind that He planned all the changes in our lives with infinite wisdom, a step at a time, to something better and brighter. And to God and Mama Mary be the glory. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat. Pagpalain kayo ng Panginoon Diyos.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beth Nagit. May I now call on Dr. Michael Eugenio B. de Guzman to come in front to be inducted as the new QCMS OIC President by Dr. Wilfredo Tagde, PMA Governor for Quezon City Region.
Please raise your right hand and follow after me. With the oath of office, I state your name.
Dr. Michael Eugenio B. de Guzman
Of the Quezon City Medical Society.
Of the Quezon City Medical Society.
Having been duly assigned.
To the position of. OIC President.
Do hereby solemnly swear. That I will faithfully discharge.
To
the best of my ability. The duties and responsibilities of my position. That I will support and defend. The Constitution and bylaws. Of the Quezon City Medical Society. And the Philippine Medical Association. And that I impose this obligation upon myself. Voluntarily. Without mental reservation. Or purpose of evasion. So help me God. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Dr. de Guzman. We will now proceed to the turnover ceremony for the President of the Quezon City Medical Society. May I now call on Dr. Maria Lilibet Pascual Nagit President QCMS 2019 to 2020, and Dr. Michael Eugenio de Guzman, President QCMS 2020 to 2021, for the turnover ceremony.
I hereby hand this medallion to you, Dr. Michael Eugenio de Guzman, as a symbol of responsibility as President of the Quezon City Medical Society.
I gladly accept.
And this gavel as a sign of authority over the Quezon City Medical Society.
I gladly accept. Thank you.
Let's give them a big round of applause. And now, to give his inaugural address, please welcome the QCMS OIC President 2020 to 2021, Dr. Michael Eugenio de Guzman.
Dr. Jose Santiago, President of the PMA, Dr. Benito Atienza, Vice President of the PMA, the past governors and presidents of the Quezon City Medical Society, Dr. Wilfredo Tagle, QCMS Governor, Dr. Lilibeth Pascual Nagit, outgoing QCMS President, the QCMS Executive Board, members of the Quezon City Medical Society, fellow doctors, our colleagues from the PRMD of Unilab, a pleasant afternoon to all of you. I am deeply honored and privileged to have been inducted as the officer in charge of the Quezon City Medical Society. I must admit, though, that leading the society is a daunting and challenging task. The COVID pandemic has altered the lives of people all over the world and has adversely affected our practice as medical professionals. As we usher in the era of the new normal, as doctors and as citizens of this country, so too must our society embrace the new norms that we have to follow. For as long as this pandemic is not controlled, we will not be able to resume the activities and projects of our society the way we have done so in the past. For now, at least, we will not be able to congregate physically for our conventions, scientific meetings, and continuing medical education activities. Our outreach programs, free clinics, child advocacies, and other related projects will likewise be severely affected. These are the obstacles that our society has to face in the months to come. But the Quezon City Medical Society is a strong organization founded on the wisdom, dedication, and competence of the officers and members who have preceded us. And we will overcome these obstacles. In the light of this pandemic, we have to utilize the resources available to us to move forward. This regional assembly is a testament to how we can use technology to our advantage during these times of crisis. In the coming months, the officers of the society and the Committee on Electronic Media will utilize the internet, social media, and information technology to create an extensive database of our members and an open line of communication between all officers and members of the society. This shall be the backbone of the society's response to the new normal. And as we go along, we will find ways to carry out our projects and activities through the internet and social media. At present, we are already formulating ways in which members can settle their dues and likewise receive their certificates of good standing online. Our scientific committee will be tasked on conducting our scientific meetings and conventions online as well. The same applies for our outreach projects, free clinics, advocacies, and other activities. I must admit that it's a big challenge to lead the society the way our outgoing governor, Dr. Wilfredo Tagle, and President Dr. Lilipet Pascual Nagit did. Their dedication and competence as governor and president has truly led the Quezon City Medical Society to greater heights. That responsibility now rests on my shoulders. The crisis that we now face makes leading the society even more challenging.
Good afternoon. That concludes the first QCMS Regional Assembly under the new platform. This is indeed another milestone for QCMS as we adapt to this new phase of our lives. We give thanks to the Lord God Almighty for all the graces. We are also grateful to our speakers whose talk show depth of knowledge and confidence, to our moderators who manage the program professionally and with competence. We give also our gratitude to Mr. Ed Canapi of Unilab, PRMD, to the IT people of Microsoft team, to our MCs, Dr. Jose Antonio Matulak and Dr. Rylan Flores, and of course, to all the participants who attended this Regional Assembly of QCMS in their homes and workplaces. As we move on with our lives, our prayers are offered to our frontliners as we continue to battle this invisible enemy. Again, thank you. Hope to see you soon. Please stay safe and God bless us all.